Have you ever felt like your investments are stuck in quicksand? You put money in, $50 here, $100 there, but months later, it feels like nothing has changed. I know because I was there too. I'm Harry, and a few years ago, I found myself refreshing my account over and over, hoping for some kind of miracle that never showed up. If you've been waiting for your money to finally take off, I get it. That slow crawl can make you wonder if the whole process even works. But here's the twist. The real magic isn't in chasing a secret stock. It's in reaching the tipping point where your money quietly starts growing faster than your own contributions. That's when compounding flips from discouraging to almost unfair. Before we get there, though, we need to look closer at why those early months, or even years, feel so frustratingly empty, almost like filling up a leaky bucket. The emotional trap of slow starts is one of the biggest challenges in investing, and it's easy to underestimate until you've felt it yourself. In the beginning, your effort feels disconnected from results. You sacrifice disposable income, make regular deposits, and still watch your balance hover almost motionless. That gap between the work you're putting in and the lack of visible change is where most beginners stumble. It's not that compounding isn't happening, it's that its impact during those first months, or even years, is almost invisible. I remember feeling this drag for years. I'd add $50 here, $100 there, and it felt like I was dropping raindrops into a desert. The deposits went in, but whenever I opened my account, nothing seemed to move. That silence left me wondering whether the whole promise of compounding was exaggerated. Many new investors experience the same frustration. You save money you could have spent on dinners, weekends out, or things you wanted, only to check back months later and feel almost insulted by how little is showing up as growth. The reason it feels so discouraging is that most of us expect to see a simple, diagonal upward line. Progress in other areas of life often looks like that. Train consistently and your muscles get stronger. Study daily and exam scores improve. Investing, however, doesn't give that kind of short-term, visible feedback. Instead, the curve stays flat for a long stretch, and only after sustained effort does it start to angle upward. The mismatch between what we expect and what's actually happening convinces many people to cut their losses and walk away, even though the math beneath the surface is working exactly as it should. The human brain craves feedback, and investing delivers disappointment at first. When you go to the gym, you notice soreness after the workout, or maybe a leaner look after a month. That's tangible feedback. With your money, the system moves so slowly in the beginning that the lack of evidence feels like failure. Psychologically, this is dangerous. You start telling yourself the strategy isn't worth the trade-offs, when in fact those tiny returns are quietly laying the groundwork for the stage where the system finally accelerates. To picture it, think of rolling a snowball uphill. Every push takes strength, but the momentum you see is almost non-existent. The snowball barely grows, the progress is hidden, and it feels like a losing battle. And yet, reaching the crest changes everything. Once gravity works with you instead of against you, the effort you put in earlier suddenly reveals itself. The problem is that many people give up during that tedious uphill stage. They stop depositing, or worse, pull out completely just before the turning point. When that happens, the cycle resets. Every pause or withdrawal is like shutting off an engine just as it's beginning to warm up. The frustrating part is that even in those stagnant months, growth is happening, just in small, shallow layers. Interest and reinvested returns are stacking in the background. It's what I like to call reflected growth. Faint at the start, but essential in building the momentum that eventually flips everything forward. The trap comes from not being able to see it, so it's misread as nothing's happening. What follows next is the real pivot point. There comes a stage when those layers, which once felt negligible, compound into something you can finally see. Suddenly, the returns in a single year match several months' worth of contributions. That shift feels shocking the first time it happens, because it's such a sharp contrast to the slow crawl at the beginning. It's the same process that once felt pointless, but now accelerates as if the math has suddenly tilted in your favor. And this moment, the one where your deposits are finally matched or even outpaced by growth itself, is what we'll look at next. It's a tipping point that makes the early grind worthwhile, and for many, it almost feels like cheating when it shows up. Imagine the moment when you look at your investments and realize the growth alone has finally matched several months of your hard-earned contributions. That's the psychological tipping point most people wait for. The "this is working" moment, when compounding stops feeling invisible and begins to show up in ways you can actually measure. It doesn't happen at the same time for everyone, but for most steady savers, it tends to arrive somewhere between 2 to 5 years of consistent deposits, depending on your rate of return, the market, and fees. To make this clearer, let's say you commit to $300 a month without fail. That's $3,600 in deposits over the course of a year. In the beginning, almost all of your balance comes from those deposits. The actual gains are so faint you can barely notice them. But as your base grows, change starts to stack up. And then you hit the point where just 1 year of compounding produces the same amount of growth as 4 months of your deposits. That's March through June, covered by growth alone. For many people, that's when investing finally feels real. It's not just numbers moving slowly anymore. You can see the balance moving in leaps that once took you serious effort to create. Harry described his version of this moment with complete clarity. For him, 1/4 of market growth nearly equaled 6 months of contributions. He wasn't anywhere near wealthy at that point, but the psychological effect was undeniable. Instead of staring at $50 or $100 trickling in like droplets in the desert, he was suddenly seeing jumps that rivaled half a year of deposits all at once. That shift changed his relationship with money. Compounding stopped being an abstract idea and became something he trusted, because it was finally doing the heavy lifting instead of leaving him to carry all the load. The important thing to understand is that this isn't about luck. Those jumps weren't from hitting the right pick or guessing the market. As Harry often explained, that change came from lower fees, real automation, and unbroken momentum. Once contributions turned into a schedule, not a whim, compounding had something steady to multiply. That consistency, not chance, is what allows this tipping point to emerge. It means you don't have to hope for miracles. You have to build the conditions that let the math unfold the way it's designed to. This is also where compounding starts to pay you twice. The first reward is obvious, the dollars themselves, the bigger jumps in your balance. But the second is just as valuable, the decision it opens. Once the curve bends in your favor, your options expand. You suddenly have the freedom to adjust future goals, accelerate savings, or even just relax because you're no longer the only one powering forward. That's when the process starts to feel unfair, in the best sense of the word. The system begins to work for you, not against you. From this point on, every fresh deposit gets amplified. Each new contribution doesn't just sit on its own, it enters a system already running at speed. Growth multiplies growth, and the loop begins to feed itself. You stop checking your balance with frustration and start checking out of curiosity, because what once felt impossible is now showing up in concrete numbers. Confidence replaces exhaustion. And here's the key. Reaching this stage doesn't require discovering a secret stock or some hidden formula. The real difference comes from building the slope so it runs in your favor from the beginning. Most people never get there because they sabotage their own progress with leaks, irregular habits, or distractions that overwhelm consistency. But if you focus on removing those barriers, the same process that feels impossible in the first 2 years can turn into something that builds momentum almost automatically. So the real question isn't how to get lucky, it's how you can structure your system so that steady compounding has no obstacles in its way. That's the part most beginners overlook, and it's exactly what we need to look at next. Building the unfair slope starts with recognizing that most investors aren't held back by the market itself, but by the way they've set up, or failed to set up, their own system. Luck can feel tempting to chase, but relying on a hot tip or the next sure thing is fragile. The real difference maker is whether the structure you use keeps moving even when your motivation dips. What feels like unfair growth later on only happens because you've reduced the friction early. That's why building a slope that tilts in your favor begins with the basics, not with guessing the right stock. The foundation comes first. Before compounding can work its magic, you need money that won't collapse under pressure. Start by building a 1-month emergency fund. Then gradually grow it to cover 3 to 6 months of essential expenses. Keep it in a high-yield savings account so it's safe, earning a little interest, and immediately available when you need it. On top of that, tackle high-interest debt. Credit card rates and payday loans act like permanent leaks in your bucket, draining future growth before it can build. Eliminating them strengthens your system. Some people like the snowball method for quick psychological wins, knocking out the smallest balances first, while others prefer the avalanche method, paying off the highest rate debt first for maximum efficiency. Either approach works. The key is sealing those leaks so your future gains don't vanish into interest payments. Once your foundation is secure, automation takes over as the silent safeguard. When you rely on willpower, every month becomes a debate. Do I save or do I spend? Automation removes that choice before it appears. Set up an automatic transfer to your savings or investment account on payday. That way, your future gets funded before you've even seen the cash sitting in your checking account. Over time, you won't notice the money leaving. You'll just see your balance steadily built. This is more than convenience. It's classic behavioral finance. Automation prevents those "I'll start again next month" delays that derail progress. Design beats discipline. By removing human error from the system, you guarantee that deposits keep flowing even when life is busy, stressful, or tempting you in other directions. The third layer of the backbone is adaptive allocation, the way your investments are divided and kept in balance. You don't need to make it complex. A simple mix, say 80% stocks and 20% bonds if you want growth, or 70-30 for moderate risk, is enough to give structure. These ratios aren't permanent. They can shift as you age or your goals change. The crucial part is keeping them in line by rebalancing once a year. That's often all it takes to keep your system disciplined. You avoid chasing hot stocks or trying to time the market while still ensuring your portfolio adapts over time. With adaptive allocation, your money isn't scattered. It's guided by a framework that cushions downturns without demanding constant attention. Once these three elements, foundation, automation, and allocation, are in place, the slope starts to steepen in a way that feels almost invisible at first. And underneath that slope, 3 accelerators began working together. First, more principal. Your automatic deposits accumulate month after month. Second, better behavior. Automation protects you from skipping contributions and keeps momentum from stalling out. Third, reflected growth. Once dividends and gains reinvest, your returns start producing their own returns. Those 3 forces combine into a self-reinforcing cycle, And that's what creates the unfair slope over time. At first, this setup looks ordinary. Regular deposits, a balanced portfolio, a quiet savings cushion. But all the while, the slope is tilting, quietly shifting in your favor. Then comes the unexpected change. Growth that looked flat suddenly bends upward. That inflection point is the payoff of design, not luck. By building the slope early, you've positioned yourself to capture the very momentum that makes investing finally feel rewarding. And here's the good part. You don't need years to put the backbone in place. The pieces can be set up quickly, and once they're running, you can step back and let the system carry the weight. From there, the question is how soon you want to start seeing momentum build, and the answer might be sooner than you think. The 30-day sprint to flip the curve is about compressing years of trial and error into one focused month. In just 4 weeks, you can realign your entire money system so that growth feels less forced and more automatic. This sprint isn't about chasing lottery-style gains. It's about creating the feeling that your habits are finally working with you instead of against you. Think of it as giving your snowball that first steady push so it rolls on its own instead of stalling in place. Week 1 is for plugging leaks and creating breathing room. Start by scanning your usual spending, old subscriptions, unused apps, quick delivery splurges. Trim just a few to free up cash flow, but don't treat this as punishment. The goal is to redirect, not restrict. Whatever you recover, even if it's $20 or $30, send it to a high-yield savings account. Then set a small automatic transfer into that account each week, maybe $10 or $20. This step is less about the dollar amount and more about identity. It's about identity first, dollars second. You're building the habit of being someone who saves consistently. By the end of this week, your system already feels different because you've taken control and created evidence that you act on your intent. Week 2 shifts the emphasis from saving to investing. This is where you choose a broad, low-cost engine like a total market index fund designed to carry your contributions over decades without constant tinkering. Set contributions to match your payday through dollar-cost averaging. The key step is to automate it. The transfer happens as soon as income lands, no debate required. Decide on an allocation mix, like 80% stocks and 20% bonds for more growth, or 70-30 if you prefer balance, and stick to it. Then enable automatic dividend reinvestment so every return you earn immediately goes back to work. By the end of week 2, your investing process runs on rails. You've built a system that compounds without needing you to micromanage. Week 3 tackles hidden drains that quietly drag performance. High-fee funds might look small on paper, but over decades they consume tens of thousands in lost growth. Replace them with low-cost index funds whenever possible. Next, look at tax-advantaged accounts, your workplace retirement plan, an HSA, or a Roth IRA. Using these accounts helps protect returns from unnecessary taxes so more of your dollars stay invested. Another overlooked safeguard: freeze your credit. It costs nothing, strengthens your protection against identity theft, and ensures no one else can take on debt in your name. Finish the week by reviewing core protections like health or renter's insurance, so one accident doesn't unravel your progress. By now, the snowball is insulated, and leaks are sealed before momentum gets serious. Week 4 focuses on raising the floor. Make a rule that any extra income, a raise, bonus, or side hustle money automatically has at least half directed into your investments. This guarantees your savings rate increases over time, not your lifestyle costs. Add one last step: schedule an annual rebalance. Even 5 minutes once a year to realign your portfolio keeps your mix consistent with your goals. At this point, the hard work is front-loaded. From here on, your system just needs brief nudges, not constant effort. A subtle but powerful part of this sprint is identity. You're not trying to save, you are a person who pays yourself first. Personally, I never say, "I'll try to invest." I say, "I am an investor who runs a simple system." That identity shift matters more than willpower. To lock it in, celebrate the setup itself. It might sound small, but creating a ritual, maybe a toast after your automatic transfers are live, or writing it down in a journal, cements the change. You mark the start of a new system, not just a new task. When I first ran this sprint, it wasn't in a perfect season. It was during a chaotic stretch in life. And that's why it worked, because the system didn't depend on me feeling motivated, it depended on structure. You can do the same, starting tonight with that tiny weekly transfer. And once those habits are active, you'll see that compounding isn't about luck, it's about setting the slope so time works for you. That's when the math finally starts to show its quiet strength. Compounding only starts to feel different once you've built habits that tilt the slope in your favor. The math is always there, but it takes steady consistency before you can actually see it working. That's the point when growth stops being abstract and becomes visible in your balance. Here's how to start. Open your Notes app and write, "I pay myself first." Set a $20 weekly transfer into your high-yield savings or brokerage account. On your next payday, set up a small dollar-cost averaging investment into a low-cost index fund that fits your time horizon and risk tolerance. Add a calendar reminder to rebalance 12 months from now. Then, forget about it. Do those 4 steps and DM future you a thank you, because that's the moment your slope changes. This video is for education, not financial advice. Investing involves risk and no return is guaranteed. Do your own research or consult a qualified advisor before making decisions.